left. In the world of one-liners, it said, where there's a will, there's a relative. In these economic times, that couldn't be more true.
Over the past 6 months, aging parents have seen their nest eggs scrambled in a market freefall. Even their homes, should they still be in them, won't net the same potential estate that they'd hoped to leave to their children. And make no mistake about it, as the economy gets worse, many children will be looking at that inheritance as their entitlement. Sad, but true.
When it comes to the foibles of family wars over an inheritance, there is no one more adept than Les Kotzer, an attorney whose entire practice is devoted to wills and estates. His new book is titled, Where There's an Inheritance, ... He joins us now from Toronto. Les, how's the recession impacting families in terms of estate planning?
Well, I think a lot of people are starting to realize they've got a plan. A lot of baby boomers. There's a story in the book about a woman who called her husband a waiter. When I asked what restaurant, she said, no, he's waiting for his inheritance. So a lot of people are also depending upon inheritance as a mattress to fall back on. So I think you have to be aware as a parent, if you're loaning money to a child, to make sure that you have, keep good records of this. If you're having a child moving back in with you because he lost his job, make sure you speak to the other kids and say, look, I'm not letting Bill influence me, because the other kids may be scared to think that he's going to push mom into changing her will to maybe leave him in the house.
But isn't that a problem right there? I know so many people who have this sense of entitlement. I mean, the reality is that is the money that money belongs to the parents, and they can will it to a cat. I mean, it's not their money, and they certainly shouldn't feel this sense of entitlement to it.
Don, I'll tell you, I see that all the time in my practice, and to me, family is our greatest asset, and I'm seeing our families being destroyed over these assets, personal effects of mom and dad, money, and it really breaks my heart when I see this. And I also see a lot of people that are doing things on their own, like homemade wills. And one of the things I do in my practice is I do free will reviews to check over these documents. And I'm going to tell you, I see a lot of people coming with old wills. They think that their wills are good, and then they have bad clauses in them. They don't protect their kids. We talked off air about a family law clause. A lot of parents out there want to make sure that their children, whatever they inherit, nothing will go to a son-in-law or daughter-in-law from that inheritance if their kids split one day after the death of the parent. Well, a lot of the wills I review don't have that special clause in it. I put it in every will that I do to make sure that if you leave money to your kids or an asset to your kids and they ever get divorced, nothing grown from that inheritance will be split by your son and daughter-in-law.
And that holds up.
That's absolutely. It's Ontario law. And if you have to use these homemade wills, often people get them off the internet or from other provinces. And even some wills I've seen from lawyer-drafted wills in Ontario don't have that clause in it. And to me, that's so important. So people may be walking around thinking that they're protected, but there's ticking time bombs in their safety deposit box.
Les, suppose, and geez, I don't think this happens to anybody, suppose you don't get along with your siblings, and you want to pre-plan something so that you avoid any battle with regards to mom and dad's inheritance. First of all, I'm assuming this is a common thing, but how do you avoid it ahead of time if you've got, maybe you're on the outs with one of your siblings, or all of your siblings for that matter?
Well, I think communication is very important with mom and dad. I think it's important. I mean, when you get a phone call like I get, phone calls like, I hate my brother. Please, next time when you speak to him, tell him how much I hate him. Don't call him my brother. Call him my mother's other child. When I hear these kind of calls coming to my office, and we have a lot of that in the book, some shocking stuff that I think people will really be surprised that siblings can act this way. I think communication is very important. If you, as a parent, don't make a will, you have to understand that the law of Ontario writes one for you, and that child that is your, quote, favored child, maybe the caregiving child, the child that spends all the time with you, will get exactly the same as a child you rarely see or the child that has no communication with you. So Ontario writes the will for you if you do not make a will. So it's important to plan ahead and do this.
Yeah, but Les, you can't. It's hard to go to your parents and say, you're going to die someday, and it might be soon. Have you got everything looked after, isn't it?
I think it's important for parents themselves to recognize this. I was featured with that book in the New York Times, Associated Press, and I'd urge people to send a copy to their parents to read this, to realize what can happen to a family. These are stories from inside my law practice. I don't think this has ever happened before, where two wills lawyers, my partner Barry Fish and myself, are telling you what goes on behind the scenes of wills and estates, the battles, the shocking stuff, the stuff that will touch touch your heart and realize some people are really great people and will do anything to protect their sibling. Not everybody's bad out there. And I think we have to understand that communication, understanding the law, reading these kind of things will help go a long way to help protect families. Because once a parent is gone, once that referee is out of the game, all bets are off. The kids could be fighting over rugs, rings, trinkets, money, anything can happen. Go to aninheritance.com, because on aninheritance.com you can listen to some of the stories from the book, share them with your family, listen to them, and realize what can happen to your family. These weren't families that necessarily were multimillionaires. These are families of the average family. That's my clientele, the average family. And we see families being destroyed so needlessly. And sometimes it's the parents that set the seeds of the destruction for their own family, not even realizing it.
How?
Well, they don't do a will, they don't update their will, they've named in their old will, they've named their brother Bobby, who's now 85 years old because the will was done in 1970. They haven't reviewed their will, they haven't updated it, and now their two kids are fighting with Uncle Bobby over, the executorship or over assets in the estate, because they could have been the executors. Why Uncle Bobby? So there are things that have to be addressed. If you have children, you may have done your will years ago and not realize that your will leaves everything to your kids at 18. Now your kids are 17. If you passed away, do you really want your children inheriting everything at the age of 18? There's a story in the book about what can happen to a family where children get everything at that young age, blowing them money. In one case, one of the kids went on drugs, didn't know how to handle money, lost it all. So I think you've got to plan ahead and keep your stuff up to date, review your documents, and have a lawyer do it for you. Don't do it yourself. It's too dangerous.
Okay, Les, we've got to run here. The book is Where There's an Inheritance, and if you want more information, aninheritance.com. Les Kotzer, always a pleasure. Real eye-opening stuff, some terrific stories in the book, and we thank you for coming on with us.
My pleasure.
Okay.